حلقة جديدة من ايجيبشن جون البودكاست. اتمنى كل الناس تسمعنا تكون بخير. حلقة النهاردة حلقة مميزة. معنا النهاردة لتاني مرة في البودكاست مارك بريندل، مسؤول التواصل مع مشجعين ارسنال من داخل النادي. حلقة تانية جديدة من داخل اسوار النادي. دايما الكلام مع حد من جوه النادي بيكون مختلف، او وجهة النظر الطريقة اللي هو شايف بيها الامور مختلف شوية عن رأينا احنا كمشجعين. طبعا يعني طبيعي الناس اللي جوه الحاجة شايفة الحاجة غير من الناس اللي بره بتبقى شايفاها. كان في حاجات كتير جدا، التغييرات اللي حصلت في النادي مع وجود إدارة جديدة من فيناي إدو، طبعا ارتيتا، حتى كل يعني الطاقم كله اتغير في آخر 4-5 سنين. رأيه في التغييرات دي وشافها ازاي كشخص جوه النادي. الاختلاف في التحضير للموسم دلوقتي عن قبل كده. الاختلافات في طبعا من جماهيريا، اختلافات بره الملعب وجوه الملعب. الحاجات دي كلها أسئلة كتير جدا سألتها له، وخلت الحلقة جميلة بصراحة. كان فيها كلام كتير جدا، أظن هتستمتعوا انتوا تسمعوه. ممكن اقول ايه تاني؟ ممكن اقول ما تنسوناش في الريفيوز على ايا كانت المنصات اللي بتسمعونا فيها، المنصات السمعيه، سبوتيفاي، ابل بودكاست، او ايا كان. لو تدونا ريفيو ده بيساعدنا نوصل ناس اكتر. يوتيوب برضو، يعني ما بعتبرش نفسي يوتيوبر، بس اعتبروا لنا لايك، سبسكرايب، كومنت، الحاجات دي كلها. مش عارف بيعملوا ايه تاني في يوتيوب، بيعملوا شير تقريبا. يعني ايا كان الحاجات اللي بيعملوها في يوتيوب بيعملوها لنا عشان تحاولوا لنا تساعدونا نوصل لناس اكتر ان شاء الله. الحلقة موجودة على يوتيوب مترجمة بالعربي، في ترجمة في السبتايتلز، ولكن في المنصات السمعية طبعا لو حد بيسمعنا وعايز يقرا الترجمة يروح على يوتيوب هيلاقي الحلقة هناك مترجمة. ممكن ابطل كلام كده ورا سيبكم تسمعوا الحلقة. ممكن نسمع الحلقة ونرجع تاني. And today I'm very happy to welcome back again on the show, second time in a couple of years, Mr. Mark Brindle, the supporters liaison officer at Arsenal Football Club. Mark, hi.
Evening, how are you?
All good, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to tour, starts on Sunday, off to America. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Super. Thank you very much for joining us again.
No problem.
Since we spoke last time, things changed a lot, I would say. We spoke like a year and a half ago, a few months ago. Things changed a lot. Maybe we can start on that note. So we've seen a lot of change when it comes to the culture of the club. That if you look back, let's look back to the COVID period when we had no fans at the stadium, and then fans started coming back. We can even go back even further than that, going back to the last couple of years of Arsene Wenger, the second season of Emery. Things were a bit divisive when it comes to the fans and inside the stadium. Now things are quite different, I would say. Not just on the pitch, of course. The pitch is a very affecting factor when you're going for second or just losing out on the title in the last couple of weeks. It's very different when you're fighting for eighth. That's definitely different. But we can see that a lot has changed within the culture of the club. How have you seen or have you experienced that change in the culture since you're someone who's on the inside? What aspects have you seen change, or what have you experienced going through this period?
Yeah, I think before COVID, we were all fully aware that there was a division within the fans, and I think COVID reinforced the fact that football is nothing without supporters, and there was a great drive after COVID to put supporters right at the centre of everything we did. Not that they weren't before, but we just felt that we needed to re-emphasise that point. And Mikel was a big factor in that. He from day one, he knew that he had to get the fans on his side, and he's worked hard at that side of things, and so have the club, to be fair. There's some new people come into the club, and it's been a great help to me, in that, you know, quite a few projects have come to fruition that we've been trying for a long time. We've got a new match day team now that do things in the ground, and I think results obviously helped. As you said, you know, if you're challenging for 8th place, then the crowd are not going to be as happy as they are if you're in the top two. So that did help, but I think there's a general feeling that the club is moving forwards and people want to be involved. So yeah, it's been very positive experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you just said, people, I think it went from lots of empty seats in midweek games to now it's extremely difficult to get a ticket to even League Cup games. It's really difficult, really challenging thing to find a ticket. So people want to watch when the team is doing well. But I guess there's also the aspect of the brand of football we're playing now, because before, I would say between 2009, 2014, people were also going to matches. We weren't winning a lot. We won the FA Cup a couple of times, but people were coming for the brand of football we were playing, which faded off and disappeared for a while. And that's back in full force now, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, the quality of the football does count for a lot. You know, we've got a tradition now of playing in a certain way, and obviously that was started by Arsene. And I just think Mikel's picked up on that and taken it further forward. I think in Arsene's day it was more a case of we went out and played how we wanted to play, and not really worried about how the opposition were going to play. Whereas I think Mikel is more flexible in his tactics. I think you can see that even from the players that he's signed, in that they can play in different positions, and he will adapt. I mean, obviously there's a certain style that he wants to play in, which is very easy on the eye, you know. And but I think tactically, you know, football always moves on, doesn't it? So
True.
it's we're under a new regime now, and I think you're going to see even more sort of tactical changes within games because of the amount of substitutes you can use now. So so I think you've got to have a manager or coach that is willing to embrace all these changes and you know, come up with his own ideas as well. So, and I think Mikel's the perfect man for that, really.
I agree. Exciting times. I want to touch on a point that you mentioned in the question right before this one, which is lots of new initiatives and lots of stuff that weren't happening before starting to happen now. Starting with lots of, we've seen over the past couple of years, I would say the title challenging year and the one before it, lots of welcoming back past icons of the club. We've seen Arsene Wenger in the stadium for the first time since he left. Lots of players are being invited into either the pre-match stuff that happens on the pitch or the stuff that happened in halftime. We see them in director boxes and stuff. We see them around the club in videos, sometimes interacting with players in the squad. How much of that had come by design, or I mean, was there an initiative to actually reach out to the heritage and the culture or the previous people involved with building the culture of the club, or is that also something that comes with doing well? When you do well, people who are associated with the club want to remain associated with the club.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think, to be fair to the club, we've always reached out to our ex-players and tried to look after them. You know, they've always had involvement on match day, but yeah, maybe it's just a case of things are positive now, so you're seeing more of them. You're right in that Mikel is very keen on sort of ex-player, ex-manager involvement at the club. And he feels that everyone's got a contribution that they can make. So I agree to a certain extent, but you know, we're fully aware of our history as a club and very proud of it, and you know, we try and look after him. But you are right in that, you know, the demand from ex-players has gone through the roof, as well as just supporters generally. So I can remember a couple of years ago, we'd have problems getting ex-players to come along on match days, but now they're fighting to get in there, and we haven't got any tickets to give them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was at the Wolves game. It was extremely difficult to get a ticket. So because I think also because of the anticipation that it might have been the title game, but I think throughout the whole season it was really difficult to get any kind of ticket, even for just a game that is at the middle of the season that didn't have lots of significance. But as we said before, the brand of football, the kind of football we're playing, the success that all that brings more people to watch and want to be part of it. Just that's a question that I just thought of now because of something that you mentioned. Mikel being keen on ex-manager involvement. Can we expect to see more of Arsene back in the club, or not? Doesn't have to be an official role, but just involvement in general.
Yeah, I think Mikel's on record as saying that he'd love him to contribute more. So I think the ball is in Arsene's court, and there's an open door there for him. We love him to come back to the club more regularly, but that's his choice in effect.
It's been a hard break on him, I guess.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Always after 22 years, I would say.
I mean,
always.
Let's put ourselves in the same position.
Yeah.
But we would be disappointed, wouldn't we? So, and he was and he is a great manager. I never expected to see football the way he played it at Arsenal, and so he's the greatest manager of my lifetime.
Same.
Mikel might well trump him. You never know, but let's wait and see. So we'd love to see him back every week.
Yeah, definitely, we all would.
Yeah.
So staying in the direction of things that have changed or things that we do now a bit differently, you've been involved in several summers of Arsenal's recent history. How different are the preparations for the summer now when it comes to going on tours, comes to interacting with fans? You just mentioned you're about to take off, I think, on the 17th to the US tour, just after the team comes back from Germany, playing Nuremberg on Thursday. How different are things when it comes to preparations now? Because we hear all the time that Mikel is a very detail-oriented person who pays a lot of attention to details. We've seen the pictures of the changes in the walkway to the pitch or in the training facilities. Lots of Arsenal touches here and there just to enforce the energy and the family feeling within the club. How has that also changed when it comes to preparations?
Yeah, so I think if we look back over a period of time as well, the pre-season training has changed so dramatically. The early years of Arsene, they used to go to Austria every year, up in the mountains, a few little friendly matches, and some good altitude training, I suppose. But it's become far more detailed and professional, as you said, with the balance that we live in the real world, and these tours can be very lucrative for the club. For instance, I think the game in New York now, we've sold 65,000 tickets, and I think the average price is $220. So it's a lot of money. I think at the SoFi Stadium we're up to nearly 50,000 sold. So there's still a few tickets for sale there if anyone's out in America at the time. So it is lucrative, but I just remember from last year's tour, the chief benefit as I saw it was that the as far as the training was concerned, was that it's very detailed, as you said, and it's very short and sharp. And they get it done, and they work very, very hard in a concentrated period of time, and then they'll do it maybe 2 times a day as well. So it's good. And the other thing was, of course, that the new players coming in last year, so we're talking Jesus and Zinchenko, and even Saliba to a certain extent, could fit straight in now. They could train away from like all the eyes of the world on them. So yeah, it was great. We also did step up the fan connection. It was the first year I went on tour last year, and we really built on the fan connection, and again that's been stepped up this year. I think we're in America for 10 days, obviously 3 games, but I think we've got well over a dozen supporter events going on during those times. Not a lot of interaction with the players because the players are there to train, but you know, we'll have legends with us, and we'll just have, you know, a really good time meeting all our supporters. Last year some of it was just mind-blowing. Baltimore was incredible on match day. We've been to the Baltimore supporters pub the night before for a podcast, and it was a little pub in a street, and we walked in, and it was like being back in Islington. It was just red and white everywhere. It was just incredible. And then they said to us, "Oh, will you come to our little street party tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. We'll stop in before the game," and thinking it was just going to be outside that pub. And we turned the corner, and it was the whole street, and there was like 5,000 American Arsenal supporters. It was just mind blowing, like, and the amount of people. I mean, I had no voice by the time I got to the ground because just talking to so many people, and we sent up a drone and filmed the whole street, and I sent that straight through to Vinay. And Vinay rang me immediately and said, "Mark, where is this?" Like, and I said, "Literally, it's just round the corner from the ground, and we're all going to march up together to the ground." He couldn't believe it either, but just incredible. And talking to a load of these guys as well, and I think, you know, we all think of Americans as being wealthy, etc. A lot of those guys and girls there basically said to me, "Look, you know, I'll never get a chance to go to Emirates. I just can't afford it. So this is a chance for me to see my team." And the level of knowledge and the passion, and that's what I find all around the world, talking to the likes of yourself, and other people, that it is quite amazing. I was talking to a group of supporters today in Bahrain who are setting up a supporters club. So, you know, it just keeps growing and growing everywhere. Good times.
Yeah, it is. We've got a few listeners in Bahrain who are listening to us now, so that's shout out to them. Cool. A question on something also you touched on, because you've interacted with Arsenal fans in different areas of the world, different regions, different backgrounds, different cultures, and it's something that I believe in to an extent, that people, like-minded people, tend to support similar clubs, or sometimes the same club, but sometimes similar clubs when it comes to just principles and heritage and culture in general. How much have you seen that when you interact with people from Africa and then people from the United States, back to Europe, back to people in Asia? Have you seen this common ground or common understanding of what the club means?
Yeah, I think that's a big factor in people supporting Arsenal. That, you know, they might just watch football to begin with. They might like the colour of the shirts. They might like the fact that we won the cup final or something like that. But once they get into the actual day-to-day of the club, it is really noticeable that they get into the history of the club, and the feeling behind the club. You know, I'm not saying that we don't go out and spend money. That's clearly evident that we do over the last few seasons. And we have done in the past, but I always feel that we've got quite a strong story to tell, in that we, you know, we're not owned by a state or anything like that, and we try and do it our own way with youth players and buying in some people on top of that, and all our great sides through the years, from George Graham Arsene Wenger, and even prior to that, the 71 double side, the 1930 side, they all had youth players and players just added in on top of that. I think we've got a really good story to tell there. And maybe we don't tell it enough. I'm always of the opinion that we should be proud of it. And we are proud of it, but I think we could do more with that.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. How much have you seen this global fan base growing? Because with the introduction of social media, and the world has become extremely different when it comes to all of this. Of course, the stadium remains the stadium and it stays a different environment. And I've always stressed on the fact that what you see online is not what people in the stadium think, because even if you're just watching on TV, you can see that people in the stadium hold different opinions when it comes once the game starts. Basically, maybe before that they have different opinions, but once kickoff time comes, everyone agrees on just supporting the players and being around them until the last minute of the game. But how much growth have you seen in this global fan base? Because now it's 2023, so there were people who were born in 2006, 7. They've never seen Arsenal win the league. They've never seen Arsenal in a Champions League final or even a semi-final. And I mean, some people have never seen Arsenal in the Champions League to begin with. I mean, they're like 8 or 9 years old now. They're not that old, but they still count. So it logically things should slow down a bit when it comes to the global fan base growing year over year, and some other clubs who did not exist or existed but were not very relevant 15 years ago are now dominating everything else. But still, the global Arsenal fan base is growing day after day, and you see it in the numbers on social media, you see it in the interactions with people everywhere. How much growth have you seen, and what do you attribute it to general?
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal, really, and you're totally right in that the perceived lack of success, and don't get me wrong, I think winning cup finals is a good thing, and we haven't done so well in Europe and the Premier League for a long time now. But when I was growing up, it was we won one cup in 15 years, so it's all relative. The success, and we are fighting against some mega corporate clubs, and Newcastle have joined in on that now. I think Newcastle's growth will be very interesting over the next few years. But I think it goes back to the story we're telling. I think supporters look at that and they like the idea of we're going to fight. And we're going to fight on a fair basis. But so the growth has been incredible, really. You're right. We see it on a daily basis, and I was quite worried last year when we was in Florida and we played Chelsea, because I thought that the misconception, I suppose, really, in that we're in America, we're in a big stadium. Are we going to be outnumbered by Chelsea fans? Because Chelsea
more successful recently,
just all the trophies, and I hold my hands up to Chelsea. I don't particularly like Chelsea as a football club, but they're consistent winners. It's not the way I would like my club to be run, but that's just by the by. They will always turn around and say, well, yeah, we win things, you don't. So I was a bit concerned about that, but on the day, I would say it was 50-50 in the ground, and maybe even slightly more Arsenal than Chelsea. And then you start thinking, well, we've got this support, and people are sticking with us. And I suppose in England, a lot of English fans think a lot of overseas fans are just glory hunters, following the latest team that's winning everything, and you get that in England as well. I mean, I live in the south of England. You would never see children in Man City shirts even 3 years ago. Now you're seeing them all the time. So, you know, you do get that glory hunt apart.
Yeah.
But I think, as we've already said, our history, our tradition, the way we want to play football, the fact that we're, as a club, we have never had any large scale problems in our stadiums with any sort of racism or anything like that. You know, we are a home for everyone, and I think that counts for a lot. I mean, you can even if you watch old 1970s clips of matches at Highbury, the amount of black faces you'll see in the crowd is vastly more than any other ground. I mean, I used to go to football in the 70s, and, you know, black people would not go to certain grounds. You just wouldn't see them. But that was never a problem at Arsenal. So I think that counts for a great deal, really.
Absolutely. And because you'd see black players at Arsenal before anywhere else. We've seen Rocky,
I think
Ian Wright.
Yeah, it was us and West Bromwich Albion in the Midlands had some great black players as well. You know, and it was tough at that time for black players. And you know, I can remember some horrible stuff happening at grounds, but you know, and I think the sort of the right wing politics, they did try and infiltrate at Arsenal, but they just got thrown out straight away. You know, they tried it at all the football grounds, and they were accepted at certain places, but at Arsenal, it just wasn't going to happen.
It's extremely rare to hear something like this at the Emirates or Highbury. I mean, I don't recall an incident that I've heard of or seen. It's very few.
Listen, in the heat of the moment and people with alcohol, you get the odd comment at times. What we've done better with over the last few years, if those comments have been made, is that people do tend to report them now. And there's a whole reporting system, and you know, they will be dealt with accordingly. So it won't be tolerated at all. But you know, you always get the odd person. So yeah, it will always be there to some extent, I feel. But you know, it's not anything that we're particularly worried about, you know.
Yeah, because it's not something that happens too often, so it's really part of how things are being done.
And I think you know, have you seen the new designs around the outside of the stadium? All the
I was
the
about
new
to ask you about
cores?
this. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw it last time.
Yeah, so that was a really great project to work on. But the main wall that I'm sort of really proud about is all our international fan groups on their flags and one wall. And what we're doing, we're hoping to do start of next season. We did it for the last game last season. Is we just put a message out to all our supporters clubs and say, if anyone's coming, we're going to meet up by the flags around 2 hours before kick-off. Come up and we'll take a big group photograph. So we get people from all these different corners of the world, you know. I think against Wolves we had something like 75 different international supporters clubs.
I missed
there.
that by 15 minutes. I just didn't know about it. I missed it by 15 minutes.
Well, you'll know next time. You know, we are going to try and make it a bit more of a tradition that we do that. I mean, I might not be able to get there every time, but you know, we just arrange for people to meet up there and they can take some photos. And it's good, again, you know, you get to talk to other people from around the world. It was quite interesting at the Wolves game that 3 or 4 people had never met before and are now regularly conversing. A couple of people from Ireland, and you know, it was a really positive experience.
It's what it's all about, really. I mean, and that's
exactly
really good to hear.
Yeah, we're all
just to follow up. Exactly, 100%. Just to follow up on what you just mentioned, lots has changed at the Emirates. Lots of new ideas when it comes to design. there was this Arsenalization movement, I would say, in 2000, I think it was 2009 or 10, something, I mean, like 10, over 10 years ago. But it didn't yield the same results as this time around. I think this time it's done much more in a natural way. I kind of felt last time was, I wouldn't say forced, but wasn't very natural. It was an attempt to move Highbury to the Emirates. But I think now what has happened is the Emirates became its own thing, and that's in itself iconic, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's been a lot more consultative this time. I remember when we first started talking about, we needed the new designs on the outside, and we called a meeting, and I was asked to gather fans, different supporters from different groups. And the first meeting we went to, and people were asked what their ideas were, and there was just so many ideas, and it's fascinating in that everyone has their own idea of what Arsenal means to them. And I remember sitting there thinking, how on earth are they going to pull all this together? And to be fair, the company that we used, they came back, took them 3 or 4 months, came back and presented to all the supporters again, and it was just mind blowing. They just they captured it straight away. There was a few little things that were taken out and a few things more added in, but I would say 95% of the ideas that come out in that first meeting all were incorporated somewhere down the line. So yeah, you're 100% correct. It was a much more collaborative approach this time.
It's quite amazing. I mean, the images with the Invincibles and integrating the youth going to full-grown adults representing Arsenal, and the images with the different generations winning different competitions, including the women's team, was also really great. But the one with the fans' faces, it's amazing. I mean, I hadn't seen it before. I hadn't even seen the pictures before I went. When I first saw it, it was amazing. I think it was the last one that went up, I think.
Yeah, that's it. It went up about a week before the end of the season. And the reason that was the last one is because every one of those faces are hand painted.
Oh, amazing.
So the artist, he got all the photographs and then painted every single one of them. So it took a bit longer, that one. But yeah, so it's great fun walking past, and every time I walk past, I spot somebody else that I know, and of course, because it's so big, you forget them, and about a week later you walk past it, oh, there, yeah. So yeah, lots of good memories from that thing, and I suppose that'll be up there for maybe the next 10-15 years as well, like the first cause. It'd be interesting to see what they do next time if they change it again.
Any plans or anything on the inside? There were some suggestions a couple of years back of increasing the number of seats or getting the seats closer to the pitch. I guess that's not really very practical, is it?
No, I think that's a bit of an urban myth that we won't be able to increase the capacity. I don't think we'd get planning permission, or if we were to get planning permission, it would be very tough and expensive to do it. If anything, the next thing on the agenda is the safe standing argument, debate, however you want to put it. I think the club wants to do it because they realise that there's a general move towards that. The issue is for the club that there's no financial reasons to it, because it will actually reduce the capacity. Because of the fact is that when the Emirates was built, it was built purely as an all-seater stadium. This idea of safe standing didn't even exist then. Hillsborough was still very fresh in most people's minds, and I think people never thought standing would come back in any shape or form. So the design of the stadium and the rake of the lower tier, the angle, does cause problems. So one, any change to safe standing is going to cost a lot of money. Two, we're going to reduce capacity because of the sight lines. So financially, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. However, the club do realise that people want it, and they are actively investigating ways that we can get it done. But yeah, as for increasing capacity, that's not going to happen. If anything, it's going to go the other way.
I mean, I think I have a friend who is 64,320 something on the waiting list for a season ticket. So I think that's where people get their hope for increasing capacity. Maybe these numbers can go down a bit, but yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I can understand, of course.
Yeah, and the thing is, even in the bad times, shall we call them, the number of people that stopped their season tickets was fairly minimal.
Yeah, of course.
This season, the renewal rate is around 99%. So for season tickets, so it's a tough story to say, but I don't think your friend at 64,000 whatever's going to get it anytime soon.
Yeah, not even in his lifetime, I would say.
Wow, this is it.
Yeah. Next season, a couple of questions on what happens inside the stadium. Next season, it's, I would say, a couple of months away. The first Champions League game since 2017. Any special plans for that, or is it just a normal game?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think we always had the sort of thinking that the Champions League group games and the Europa Cup group games was maybe not to go too mad, as on the night, because really, it was the knockout games that we wanted to be in. But you're right, we haven't been there for a while, so I think it's something that they're looking at. As I said to you earlier, we've got this new match day team, and they've got lots of good ideas. But I think what we don't want to do is go too mad to begin with, and then if we did get through to the later stages, obviously we want to really crank it up.
Absolutely.
So we want to save some budget as well. All these things cost money. Let's hope we can progress through the group stage and go deep in the tournament, because I think really that's, as somebody who's supported Arsenal since 1971, Europe has always been a bit of a weakness for us, and I think we need to really make a mark in Europe now, and establish that tradition. Push forward.
Yeah. Definitely, fingers crossed that happens this year. One last question, because I've taken too much of your time already. So next season, I think, would be a different kind of season to all the ones that passed before, given that we are contenders from the beginning, from the get-go. Usually we kind of drift into the race early on, then fade out. The story of the past 20 years. Or like last year, just show up out of nowhere and then sustain until close to the end. This year, we're being looked at as serious contenders just from the get-go. Before even a ball is kicked, we're looked at as potential competitors to Manchester City, the champions for the past 3 years. A lot has changed inside the stadium. We've completely seen that each and every home game, when it comes to support, the stadium is much, much louder. People are much more louder. There's lots of coordination and organization when it comes to supporting. Maybe it's just spontaneous and that's what happens, but we've also seen the introduction of the Ashburton Army, the Arsenal version of the Ultras, or however you want to call it. How has that panned out, or how did this come to fruition? Was it just through, as we several times mentioned so far, success brought people together and people just everything was much stronger inside the stadium, or was there any coordinated effort for that?
Well, I think we have tried to assist both Ashburton Army and Red Action. But to be fair, Ashburton Army really started when things were quite poor. You know, so they're in it for the long haul, and you know, they have helped. They've got that end of the clock end of the stadium, and the noise is really good. Red Action are probably a lot older group. Have tried for a long time to get things going in the North Bank. Sometimes with success and sometimes without. So there's been a reaction from the north end of the stadium to the improvement in the clock end. So a bit of, you know, friendly rivalries has come back into that. But yeah, generally, I think everyone just believed in the cause and what Mikel was trying to do. And even, you know, you could tell the difference. You know, even when we went a goal down, straight away the crowd would be straight back into it and trying to push the team forward. Whereas a few years back, maybe we'd go a goal down and everyone would just, you know, moan and groan. So yeah, I think it's generally there's lots of different factors in the increase in support, vocal support anyway. And you know, we'll keep working on all of those to try and make sure it stays there, and boost us on, and hopefully come up with a trophy.
It's going to be crucial for next year, definitely. Yeah. Listen, Mark, thank you very much for being here, and it's always amazing to speak to you and get some insight to what's coming again. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you next time very soon, not a year and a half from now, hopefully.
No, anytime. You know, I'm always happy to come on and talk about Arsenal. Good luck to all you guys out there, and hopefully see you at the Emirates pretty soon. And you know, peace and love and everything, and up the Gooners.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.